Gildan Media, a division of Recorded Books, presents 1001 Ways to Engage Employees by Bob Nelson. Foreword by Marshall Goldsmith. Narrated by Chris Sorensen. You'll never get the best from employees trying to build a fire under them. You've got to build a fire within them. Bob Nelson. Who owns employee engagement? Foreword by Marshall Goldsmith. I was delighted when Bob Nelson asked me to do the foreword for this book. We have spent much time discussing the topic of employee engagement over the years, and I was excited that he was focusing on it, first, because it is sorely needed given how little real progress most organizations have made on truly engaging their employees, and second, because I feel Bob's unique approach of identifying positive, real-life, practical strategies and examples for listeners to draw from was exactly what could make the most difference on the topic for both individuals and organizations alike. Whereas I maintain that behavioral change is difficult, Bob consistently reminds us that change can be easier than we might think, and is often simply a matter of finding the right idea at the right time to successfully implement. This book will help you do that. One of the eternal mysteries in the field of talent management is the poor return from American companies' $10 billion investment in programs to boost employee engagement. Part of the problem is that despite the massive spending on surveying, training, and related programs, many companies end up doing things that stifle rather than promote engagement. Why is that? I believe that it's primarily because we frame the problem incorrectly, starting with who should be held responsible on the topic. Who owns employee engagement? The standard practice in almost all organizational surveys about employee engagement is to rely on passive questions. That is, questions that describe a static condition. Do you have clear goals is an example of a passive question. It's passive because it can cause people to think of what is being done to them rather than what they are doing for themselves. When people are asked passive questions, they almost invariably provide environmental answers. Thus, if an employee answers no when asked, "Do you have clear goals?" the reasons are attributed to external factors such as, "My manager can't make up his mind," or "The company changes strategy every month." The employee seldom looks within to take responsibility and say, "It's my fault." Blame is assigned elsewhere. The passive construction of "Do you have clear goals?" begets a passive explanation. "My manager doesn't set clear goals." The result is that when companies take the natural next step and ask for positive suggestions about making changes to improve things, the employees' answers once again focus exclusively on the environment, not themselves. Managers need to be trained in goal setting, or our executives need to be more effective in communicating our vision, are typical responses. The company is essentially asking, "What are we doing wrong?" And the employees are more than willing to oblige with a laundry list of the company's mistakes and shortcomings. Even if the company improves on what employees want them to do, it's too easy for employees to continue to deflect any responsibility for the behavior and subsequently tell their employers, "It's still not good enough. You've got to do more." This becomes a no-win approach to the behavior as organizations are forced to chase an ever-shifting, impossible dream. Passive questions set up individuals to shirk personal responsibility and accountability. They can give people the unearned permission to pass the buck to anyone and anything but themselves. All motivation starts with the individual. How much better to start with each employee as the center of focus, So instead of asking them, "Do you have clear goals?" you might ask, "What are you doing to assure that your goals are clear?" Or, "Did you do your best to set clear goals for yourself?" Now the onus is on the employee to take responsibility to create a vision, craft a plan, and take action steps to obtain a better result. Or take the issue of career development. If we know anything about this topic, it's that all development is self-development. That is, you can have the best skills training programs, networking opportunities, and career paths, but if an individual isn't motivated to want to make the most of those resources and opportunities, those programs won't help that individual to learn, grow, or advance in his or her job or career. And likewise for all the engagement categories Bob presents in this book. As you listen, discuss, and apply ideas he has collected in your organization, remember to start with the individuals whose behavior you are most trying to impact. Don't just ask what needs to be done, but also who's willing to help make it happen, and what one or two things can everybody do to move us forward in this area. This approach will help assure that you're able to truly and more easily improve employee engagement with and for your employees. Dr. Marshall Goldsmith, Rancho Santa Fe, California. 1001 Ways to Engage Employees. Preface. Every company today needs to obtain extraordinary results from ordinary people in order to survive, let alone thrive. This book has a simple premise. Show people what employee engagement looks like in practice. Generally speaking, employee engagement captures the spirit, drive, and discretionary energy on the part of all its employees. It's one of those fuzzy terms in corporate America, like employee empowerment before it and employee satisfaction before that, meant to address all things and yet, as a consequence, addresses nothing. Over the last 2 decades, most organizations have launched engagement initiatives or programs at their work sites. What those efforts focused on depended primarily upon how the organization measured the concept of engagement to begin with, often using the dimensions advocated by the human resources consulting firm they were working with at the time. To help companies increase the level of employee engagement in their organization, I wanted to create a resource that started with the primary variables that most drive employee engagement, prioritize those variables in order of their greatest influence on the topic, and then identify real-life examples, techniques, and best practices of what those categories look like in practice from companies of all types and sizes. This would result in a resource that could serve as a starting point for organizations who wanted to actually move the needle in creating greater employee engagement in their organizations, not just measure the topic year after year. After all, we already know there has been very little overall change in the number of engaged and disengaged employees over the last 20 or so years. Only 3 of every 10 workers today is engaged, giving full discretionary effort on his or her job today, a statistic that, according to the Gallup organization, pretty much hasn't changed in recent decades. About half of all employees are disengaged at work, that is, going through the motions but not committed to giving their best effort in their jobs, and the remainder of employees, 18%, are actively disengaged, even to the point of being counterproductive to the goals of the organization. Since committed employees reportedly deliver 57% more discretionary effort than uncommitted ones, driving greater employee engagement is critical for all organizations today. Doing it well can make the difference in driving critical aspects relevant for achieving an organization's mission and goals, its ability to attract and retain talent, and its desired financial results. The quest for engagement. Employee engagement has become the holy grail in the management of human resources. Simply stated, employee engagement is the alignment of individual and organizational goals and values to better drive both business results and personal aspirations. Ever elusive, it seems the more companies strive to attain it, the more it slips from their grasp. But the quest continues because the topic has proven to be too important to ignore. Without an engaged staff, managers have a tough time accomplishing much, let alone the best work possible. Human resources consulting company Willis Towers Watson has noted, 4 out of every 5 workers are not delivering their full potential to help their organization succeed. And the Gallup organization has estimated that disengaged employees cost the United States $450 billion annually. In order to achieve or surpass their business objectives, companies must make sure their employees are actively engaged, inspired, and generally feel excited about their work. According to Gallup, if organizations are able to create a culture of engagement, they stand to have employees that are 480% more committed to helping their company succeed, 250% more likely to recommend improvements, 370% more likely to recommend their company as an employer. If employees are engaged in their work, they have a greater desire to work harder, to be more productive, and to be more responsible in completing work to the best of their ability. When organizations make employee engagement a priority, they can obtain increased organizational profitability, productivity, flexibility, and employee retention, and are better able to attract talent as well. Employee engagement also creates trust between the organization and its employees so that both parties can better work together to be adaptive to changing needs and circumstances of the environment in which they operate. This book focuses on a compilation of the primary drivers of employee engagement, prioritized in order of their impact on the topic. More importantly, it will show you what these drivers look like in practice through specific examples taken from real organizations that today are having a positive impact on these dimensions. With this book, you too can readily learn and apply the same ideas, techniques, and best practices in your organization or work group. Like the other 1001 Ways books I've written before this one, I have sought to boil down the topic to the essence of what it looks like in practice through the power of real-life examples. Whether you manage just one person or are responsible for thousands, this book can help you zero in on the specific behaviors and actions that matter the most in inspiring your employees to be their best each day, every day. Best of luck in your pursuit. Dr. Bob Nelson, San Diego, California. From Entitlement to Engagement. Introduction. There's a big difference between getting employees to come to work and getting them to do their best work. According to the Harvard Business Review, companies spend over $720 million each year on employee engagement, which is projected to rise to over $1.5 billion per year, yet employee engagement is at a record low. Just 30% of employees are currently considered engaged, according to the Gallup organization. Roughly the same percentage as when Gallup first started measuring the topic some 20 years ago. What's wrong with this picture? Why is increasing employee engagement so difficult? There's no refuting Gallup's extensive longitudinal research that systematically identified the core variables that distinguish high-performing organizations from their competitive also-rans in the marketplace. But knowing what those organizational pressure points are and actually moving the needle on those variables is apparently more difficult than anyone could have predicted. Or are we just focusing on the wrong things and perhaps missing the forest for the trees? Are companies spending extraordinary amounts of effort and money to chase higher engagement scores while overlooking the fundamentals of what to do to actually impact those scores and truly engage today's employees? Perhaps it's time to focus on the behaviors that truly impact employee engagement, not just the scores that measure it. That's what this book aims to do. To show you real-life examples, techniques, and best practices of what the primary examples that most drive employee engagement look like in practice from companies that are doing those things well. First, I found the best research framework for identifying those core employee engagement variables. Although most major human resource consulting firms have their own engagement variables they track for their clients, often a compilation of various dimensions they have found to be important, the research framework that most resonated with me and my 30 years of experience in managing and motivating employees was a statistical analysis of engagement variables conducted by HR Solutions. They examined survey data they had gathered on the topic of employee engagement from 3 million employee surveys and conducted a regression analysis to see which variables had the greatest impact on the topic of employee engagement. The engaged organization. Following are the top 10 dimensions this statistical analysis uncovered, rank ordered by the degree of significance each dimension had on influencing employee engagement. These variables are all interrelated. You can make the greatest progress on moving the needle in increasing employee engagement in your organization by focusing your efforts on these primary drivers of employee engagement as reported by employees today. Chapter 1. Recognition. Systematically acknowledging employees and making them feel special when they do good work. If you can only focus on one element to increase employee engagement in your group or organization, it should be recognition. Making employees feel special in timely, sincere, and specific ways when they perform well. Often called the greatest management principle in the world, recognition represents the fundamental driver of employee engagement. Employee recognition is fundamental to ongoing support and motivation of any individual employee or group. The key to driving an engagement culture is to systematically recognize employees based on their performance, not just for showing up to work. While money and other forms of compensation are important to employees, what tends to motivate them to perform at their highest levels are the thoughtful, timely, personal kinds of thanks and recognition that signify true appreciation for a job well done. This chapter shares a wide range of recognition examples, techniques, and strategies currently being used by successful companies. Chapter 2. Career Development. Helping employees learn and grow and advance in their careers. The second most important element driving employee engagement is career development. Everyone wants to feel that where they are spending the bulk of their waking hours is leading them on a path toward something bigger and better. Along the way, they want the ability to learn and apply new skills and their manager's support in doing so. In one industry-wide study, more than half of the respondents stated a strong desire for managers to support their learning of new skills in their jobs. Every employee is ultimately responsible for his or her own growth and career path. When an employee has some ambition, support from his or her manager, and options for learning and growing, they can't help but be more engaged in his or her job. In this chapter, you'll find specific examples of what companies are doing to make career development a reality for their employees. Chapter 3. One's immediate manager. the actions and behaviors used by an employee's immediate manager or supervisor. Research has shown that an employee's relationship with his or her immediate manager is the most important relationship he or she can have at work. This only makes sense because one's manager is typically the source of all work direction, coaching and guidance, and performance evaluation. All around the world, then, if you have a good boss, you have a good job. And if you have a boss that truly cares about you and your success and shows that in his or her actions, you have a great job. Most of us can reflect on the best managers we've had in our career and quickly list attributes and actions that most distinguished those individuals. Typically, on that list would be items such as good listener, took time to get to know me, clearly communicated goals, was approachable and supportive, asked thoughtful questions, made me feel important, supported me when I made a mistake, and so forth. To be a great manager, do more of the items on this list and do them more frequently. In fact, most engagement variables are things a good manager can personally impact with their employees. In this chapter, we'll explore examples of the behaviors and actions that make for a great manager. Chapter 4. Strategy and Mission. Linking each employee to the larger goals, vision, and mission of the organization. Every employee wants to feel they are part of something bigger than themselves. At work, this is most frequently accomplished by employees having a larger perspective about their role in the organization and their tie to the company's strategy and mission. The clearer this connection is made, the better the line of sight to the organization's vision and objectives, the more value employees will have and the more engaged they will be. Yet only 64% of employees feel that members of their organization understand the organization's strategy and mission. This chapter will contain examples and ideas from companies as to how they make their mission and strategies relevant to their employees on a daily basis. Chapter 5. Job Content. The work itself. What needs to be done and how best to allow employees to do that. Fundamental to any job is the work itself. Providing clear goals, priorities, and expectations is the starting point for any job, and doing their jobs well can provide an important motivational foundation for employees. Allowing employees to have a fundamental say in how they do their work is also important, as is having challenging work. Allowing employees to fully apply themselves in getting their job done is the essence of employee engagement. This chapter will show examples of ways companies are allowing employees to do what they do best on a daily basis. Chapter 6. Senior Management's Relationship with Employees. Having senior leadership be visible and known to employees. Another critical dimension for employee engagement to flourish is the relationship senior management has with employees. I find the best leaders are not above or removed from their employees, but rather are very much involved with them, helping to lead and inspire them into the future. This chapter will show numerous examples of ways senior leaders can help drive employee engagement initiatives that are important to the organization's success that go beyond approving the budget. For example, having senior management be accessible and visible to employees is as important as playing an active role in doing things in their own jobs that consistently demonstrate their commitment to employees. This chapter will provide examples of how senior management connects with their employees in a variety of companies. Chapter 7. Open and Effective Communication. Providing employees ready access to people and information. All employees want to feel they are in the know, That is, an integral part of things where they work, whether it's getting a timely answer to a question they need to complete their work, learning more about the organization's customers, products, and services, or simply knowing what's going on in other parts of the company. Managers can tap into that communication stream by being both open and transparent in sharing information, as well as asking employees for their input and ideas to improve decisions, streamline processes, enhance customer satisfaction, increase revenues, and/or reduce costs. In short, involving employees in an ongoing dialogue to systematically make positive changes in the organization for both the employees, the customer, and the organization. This chapter provides many examples of open and effective communication strategies from companies that do it well that you can apply in your organization. Chapter 8. Coworker Satisfaction and Cooperation. The quality of one's work colleagues and ease in working together with them. Who we work with in our job is another important element that impacts employee engagement. If we like our coworkers, it's easier to come to work, spend time with them as needed, help them out, and have them help us as needed in return. If your coworkers share the same level of commitment to quality and doing good work as yourself, it further impacts how engaged you'll feel in your job. And great coworkers could even raise your standard of excellence. This chapter will provide numerous examples and strategies to increase coworker satisfaction and cooperation in your team, department, or entire organization. Chapter 9. Availability of resources. Having the tools, budget, and support to do the work that's expected of employees. Having the resources to do the job one was hired to do seems like an obvious no-brainer to get the job done, let alone maximize an employee's engagement, yet we've all experienced situations in which this was easier said than done. The budget is frozen, a decision is delayed, priorities get shifted, and similar obstacles can make even the simplest plan go astray and stall or sidetrack you from your work as your focus on just getting the resources you need becomes a challenge. In this chapter, you'll learn strategies and examples from companies that have found ways to make available resources and processes a priority to those employees that depend upon those resources to get their work done in a timely, efficient manner. Chapter 10. Organizational Culture. The shared values of the organization that shape the expectations and actions of its workers. A backdrop in any organization for how good or bad a place it is to work is its culture. The shared norms, policies, and practices the company has established for working together, often defined by a set of core values that are publicly prioritized for all to use as guiding principles in their actions and decisions. This chapter will show examples of how organizations bring their values alive in the workplace to create work environments that both attract and retain talent on an ongoing basis. If you have information from employees in your own organization about the most pressing engagement needs from this top 10 list, you might consider focusing on those areas first. In fact, you might consider focusing on just the priority or top couple of engagement needs of your employees to have the greatest chance of making improvements. I've found that when organizations try to focus on a long litany of variables, they often don't make much of any noticeable difference in their results over time because their efforts are spread too thin to truly change how things are done. Much better to truly drive a key dimension. For example, to make this year the year that recognition becomes integrated into all the organization's policies and practices and every manager's focus and behaviors. The remainder of this book delves more deeply into each of these 10 categories with numerous examples, techniques, and best practices to help show what specific actions and behaviors gain the greatest traction in impacting employee engagement.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?